In today's video, we are making Keto Tuscan Chicken Pasta. We're going to be using spaghetti squash as our pasta today. You can use whatever pasta replacement that you normally use, but that's what we're using today. So let's go ahead and get right into the video. But before we do, if you're new here, you like keto or low carb recipes, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you can be updated every time we drop a video. Okay, so in this Tuscan chicken pasta that we're doing today, we are going to be using a spaghetti squash to do this. You definitely don't have to use spaghetti squash if you have another preference, if you want to use zucchini noodles or whatever it is that you prefer. I just think the spaghetti squash went really well with this Tuscan chicken. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm getting a knife and I'm just poking holes all over it. You can use a knife or a fork. And then what we're going to do is we are going to put it into the microwave. Now, how long you put it in the microwave is going to depend on the size of your squash. So now what we're going to do is we are going to put it into the microwave. The sticker that comes on the squash says to put it in for like 3 or 4 minutes, but it's never enough time for me. So what I normally do is I start it off at 5 minutes, and sometimes it takes up to 10 minutes. And now you can cut it long ways or you can cut it this way. And I've previously cut it long ways, but I just recently saw that it's much easier to cut it this way. So I've never actually tried to cut it this way before. I'm just trying it for the first time right now. And oh my god, this squash cut so much easier than any other time, but I really think that's because I poked the holes in it. So now what you're going to do is you have the insides there. It's kind of like carving a pumpkin. So you're just going to get a spoon and then just take out all the middle pieces, which is the seeds and that stuff. And I'm just going to put it into this Tupperware just to have, and then I'm going to throw it in the trash. Okay, so I went ahead and did both of them. Because we are going to be using 2 today. So then what we're going to do, no matter how you cut it, long ways or this way, you're going to place them all on a baking sheet. I know a lot of people like to cut them the long way because they actually eat their pasta inside of it like that, which I think looks pretty cool. But in my case, I did find out during this video that this way did end up being a lot easier for me with shredding the spaghetti squash. So what we're doing here is we're just getting some olive oil and we're just rubbing it all over the spaghetti squash, basically where your pasta is going to come from, on the edges and along the inside. And that's just to help the seasoning stick a little bit better and so it can cook a little bit better. You can basically season it with whatever you want. I definitely recommend seasoning it for sure with salt and pepper, and don't be afraid to heavily salt it. Alright, now I'm gonna crack some pepper in them, and again, don't be afraid of, if you're using too much, because it's really not gonna taste as much as what you're putting in. And then once you season them, go ahead and just flip them over, and that's the way that they're going to go into the oven. So let's just go ahead and finish seasoning these. Okay, we have them all ready on our baking sheet now. We're now going to put them into the oven at 400 degrees for 45 minutes. Okay, so now that our spaghetti squash is cooking in the oven, while we do that, we're going to prepare our chicken. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to get a paper towel or something and pat your chicken dry. I'm going to season them with salt. And then this is just to taste, guys. So however you like the amount of salt that you like, go ahead and do that. I'm also going to season them with some pepper. Again, pepper it to taste. I tend to like a lot of pepper sometimes. So however you normally like to season your chicken, go ahead and season it like that. I'm also seasoning it with some paprika. And then I'm going to flip them over and I'm going to season them just the same way on the other side. we are going to now just sear our chicken. We're not going to cook it slow. We're going to cook it on medium high because we want to sear the chicken. We want it to have like a nice crust on the outside. Now, as you can see, my chicken breasts were really, really large chicken breasts, so I ended up only needing to use 3 of them. But so I would say do like 3 or 4 for this recipe. If they're a little smaller, then do 4, but if they're really large, then 3 should be okay. Okay, so now in the same pan, we're not going to clean it out or anything. You're going to leave your, chicken crumbles, drippings, you're going to leave that in the pan. You're going to add in some extra oil. And now we're going to start on making our sauce. Okay, and since our chicken is done and we were cooking it on medium-high heat, we can now turn it down to like medium-low. And we really don't need to cook this on high at all. Okay, so here I am adding in some onion. I just have about half a large onion in there, or however much onion you prefer to put in there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cook them for a few minutes until they're translucent. Okay, now we're adding in our garlic. I have about 6 cloves worth of garlic here. So, however much garlic you prefer, I really love garlic, and I do tend to use more than a recipe calls for. So I like 6 cloves of garlic. If you're not a huge garlic fan, then maybe 3 or 4 will be good for you. Now we're just going to cook it until the garlic becomes a little bit fragrant, and then we can start adding in other things. Okay, so now the next thing that we're going to add in is we're going to add in some sun-dried tomatoes. You can just buy these in the jar at the grocery store. They just come in a jar, and the jar is like, it sits in like oil, okay? So normally they come all chopped up like that. So previously I had bought some that were not chopped up like this, and I just went ahead and chopped them up. But so what we're going to do now is we're just going to cook this also just for a few minutes here. And then just cook it for a little bit, and then we're going to add in our vinegar here. We have white wine vinegar. This is about 3 tablespoons. So we're going to add that in, and we're just going to let it cook in the vinegar for a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. It's going to get really, you're going to smell it. It's going to start smelling so good, you guys. So just make sure you do let it cook for like 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, now it's been cooking for a couple minutes, and now we can go ahead and add in the next thing, which is going to be some spinach. So we're using fresh spinach. I've made this before with frozen spinach too, so whatever you have on hand is fine. So I went ahead and added in about 3 cups of spinach. Okay, so I mean, again, if you're not a huge spinach fan, you can definitely use less. This is your meal, so if you only want to use a cup, just use a cup. If you want to leave it out altogether, go ahead. So we don't mind with the spinach. I really actually love spinach. My family doesn't really like to eat spinach, but they don't even notice it's spinach. But so now I'm going to add in some heavy cream. Okay, now just kind of give it a little mix, get it all into the sauce and everything. I mean, it's not 100% sauce yet. Okay, and then we also added in 2 cups of chicken broth. And now we are adding in 2 cups of shredded Parmesan cheese. Okay, now the Parmesan cheese is gonna be what helps thicken your sauce up. So in the recipe, I have to also use xanthan gum, which is optional. So what I would do is I would just wait until the very end to add in any xanthan gum, because you want to make sure that it is, if it's thick enough for you, you might not need the xanthan gum. If you want it a little thicker, you might want to add in xanthan gum. And if you're new to using xanthan gum, just remember, start off with about a quarter of a teaspoon, and then work your way up to a teaspoon. You probably definitely don't want to put more than that in, and it should start acting right away. I normally do about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, depending on how thick my sauce ends up being. So now after that, all we have to do is we're just going to simmer this sauce for a little bit until all the cheese is dissolved in there. Alright, we're going to set our sauce to the side and let it cook. But basically what we're doing now is, I kind of messed this first one up. Okay, so now what we're doing, we went ahead and set our sauce to the side, and now you can just cut up your chicken breasts into whatever sizes you want. I kind of like to cut them into longer little strips. You can also cut them into cubes, whatever your preference is. Okay, so the cheese is melted, it's, dissolved in there, and, everything looks pretty good. Now we're adding in our seasonings, which here I have garlic powder, onion powder, salt, and pepper. Now, remember, cheese already has salt in it, so you want to watch how much salt you put in. So I'm adding in some parsley and some thyme here. Okay, so now we have everything mixed in. Now we can just get our chicken, and we're going to add our chicken back into the skillet. And once your chicken is added back in, you can just, let that go for a second. And now our squash has been done in the oven and it's been cooling off for a little bit. So now I'm going to show you how we shred our spaghetti squash to use it as pasta. Okay, so now we went ahead and our squash has been sitting because it's really, really hot, you guys. Like, too hot to handle. So what I normally do when I pull them out of the oven, I set them to the side. And then I just flip them over so that the inside of the squash can start to cool. And as you can see, it's kind of ripping apart a little bit because it's, just really tender, which is what you want because then it just makes it easier to shred. So basically all I get is a fork and I just shred it into a bowl. And as you can see, you're going to get little spaghetti noodles out of it, or spaghetti looking noodles. Alright, and this is kind of optional here, but I just happen to have some fresh basil here. So I'm gonna go ahead and roll up, I probably have like 4 or 5 basil leaves here, and I'm just gonna roll them up and then chop them, and then I'm just gonna serve them on top and throw them in as garnish. When you're done, what a lot of people do is they'll add these noodles into the sauce mixture and then mix it all up and then they serve it up that way. I don't do that because my son does not really like to eat spaghetti squash. He wants real spaghetti noodles. So I give him real spaghetti noodles, so I normally keep it separate and then I just pour the sauce over it. So either way you want to do it is fine. We're just going to pour it on top. Going to make sure we get some sauce and some chicken and get a little bit of everything in there. And yeah, it should be pretty good. I could have thickened my sauce up just a little bit more. So like I said earlier in the video, make sure that you add in some xanthan gum if you want it a little bit thicker. And the cheese also helps it thicken. And I think I was a little bit short on the cheese this time. But that is it, guys. That is how you make some Tuscan chicken pasta. And I'm just going to throw some fresh basil on top. And this recipe is actually a lot easier than it may seem to some people. It's really easy, quick weeknight meal that you can do. Went ahead and put it on our plate here. So we'll give it a try here. Okay. It is so good. If you don't want to eat it as a pasta, you can make it the same exact way, except don't cut your chicken up. And you can just, put the whole chicken breast back in the sauce. And then you can eat it just like that with like a side of cauliflower rice or however it is that you want to eat it. But if you do want to eat it as a pasta, I highly recommend that you guys do spaghetti squash. It tastes amazing with it. So on that note, that's it for today's video, and I'll see you on the next one.